So we're going to talk about some project pitfalls and solutions. So first one is accidentally going into part 3 of the building code. So part 9 is the simple residential part of the building code, and there's certain things that you can do that are going to trigger yourself to get into part 3, which is going to make your project more expensive. So some of those are exceeding 4 units in one building. So if you do 6 units on a lot, you just want to break that down to 2 buildings. You can still be within part 9. The other one, as Alan kind of alluded to before, is that travel distance, and going to 4 stories may be permitted, but it's definitely going to kick you into part 3, which is going to increase your costs. So basically, you're going to have increased consultant and construction cost, more complex project team, and general more longer construction process. Solution's pretty simple: stay within part 9 where possible. So that's one. Next one we're going to talk about is the site restrictions. So there can be a lot of them, and you really want to make sure that you understand all of these. We've had many people buy lots over years and be very disappointed because of some restrictions that they were just not aware of. So city right-of-ways and easements are a big one, and those can really restrict what you can build and where you can build on the property. Next one is environmental riparian setbacks. If you got a creek or anything on the property or located near a body of water, there's certain setbacks that need to be followed, and they can be quite restrictive. After that, hydro setbacks and restrictions. Hydro has been a pretty hot topic lately. They have started enforcing rules and regulations that they say were there all the time, but have not been enforced for many years. And as a result, there's probably some properties in Vancouver and Burnaby that are difficult to develop with following all their new regulations and setbacks. So it's really important to understand those before you purchase a property. If you already own the property, well, you have it. But if you're thinking of buying a property, these are definitely things you want to consider. And again, peat zones and floodplains. Vancouver actually has a lot of peat. Trout Lake is probably the best example. And they're created by larger lakes that have over the years shrunk, and the lake bed sediment and everything creates this kind of peat. But there's lots of areas with little pockets of it, and Vancouver has a map, and you can use that to check. The other thing is, if you go down to the property, you see the sidewalk kind of going all up and down, and the yards are kind of up in this, or the houses are tilted like in Trout Lake. It's pretty obvious that it's in a peat zone. And again, Vancouver has a map of the floodplain, and Burnaby and the other municipalities have maps as well. Although I believe there's less floodplains in Burnaby, maybe on the lower south side of Burnaby. So solution, proforma feasibility analysis. Make sure you're looking at all the local zoning regulations. Make sure you get title, you're getting all the right-of-ways. Do a tree assessment, that's a big one. Look for solid geotechnical. Always allow for the possibility of a PMT. And the other thing with hydro is coordinate with BC Hydro really early. Hydro is unfortunately undergoing some challenges right now, and they have a bit of a challenging track record lately. And there's quite a few projects in the city actually that are complete, and they don't have power, so they can't convey, and people can't move into their units. So getting on top of hydro really early, and if you do need a PMT, making sure that that's coordinated well in advance, and you're doing everything you can, because that process is quite onerous and takes quite a while to get through. Okay, so next pitfall, involving the sales and marketing team too late. So this one is more along the lines of developing a product that's not aligned with the target market. And I think in Multiplex especially, we really need to be careful here, because there isn't a lot of historical data showing what is a good product, but we can kind of guess that we're following along the lines of duplexes and townhouses. So we want to make sure that we're producing a product that's going to align with the market. And what I want, and what Alan wants, and what Alejandro wants are all different. So we're going to be relying on the sales and marketing team to make sure that we're appealing to a market that is kind of a broad market, and we don't have kind of a niche market that's going to be a hard unit to sell or sell at a low price. Solution, this one's obvious. Engage a real estate marketing team prior to project commitment. And they're even going to help you with things like, what do you expect for the unit sales? And they're not just thinking in terms of dollars per square foot, they're thinking in absolute dollars. They're thinking about where it is, what are you offering, what amenities, how many parking, or how many parking you're not providing. All those things are really important. So sometimes things look good on paper, and they just don't pan out. So you really want to make sure that you have a solid team engaged early. Okay, next one is poor choice in contractor and consultants. So selecting contractors and consultants with no Part 9 Multiplex experience. It's very simple. There's lots of consultants that are great. They do towers and they do big projects. They're probably not the most appropriate person to do these little projects. So we want to make sure that we're just selecting the right contractor and the right consultant with the right experience. So vet them for relevant experience. Make sure your builder is familiar with building new wood frame construction and typical fire separations, like you'd see in a duplex. Adopt an integrated design, build, and development approach. So hire an experienced design team. Make sure your designer will be also coordinating with the consultants. The last thing you want to do, especially if you're unfamiliar, is play the consultant coordinator. You want a designer that's going to coordinate all the relevant consultants for you and make sure that everything's put together properly. And another one here is a big one, which is committing to a project before full financing approval. So ensure appropriate financing is available. So everyone's probably familiar. We've got A lenders and B lenders. A lenders are big banks, credit unions, and they have pretty good terms. Of course, the requirements to get those loans is also tighter and more stringent. You want to make sure that your proforma allows for the lending that you have available, making sure that you have the appropriate equity available at the appropriate time. So the solution: do a project proforma. Talk to the lender to understand the financing terms and costs well in advance. For those of you who aren't familiar with developing this type of product, you're going to probably be a little disappointed to find out that almost every bank, including A lenders, will be charging a commitment fee, typically around 0.85 to 1%. And if you're dealing with a B lender, that could be 2, 3, 4%. And some of the B lenders, you're talking interest rates that are well into the high double digits. So you want to be careful. A lenders are still going to be pretty reasonable. However, they are going to be more than what you would pay for conventional financing. Why? The project's risky, and it's not as stable as a home that's already built. So make sure you understand all your costs. We're going to just share kind of just a proforma here, just to give an example of all the things you'd expect to see on a proforma and what it's telling you. So this proforma is showing us a 4-unit multiplex, Vancouver R11, and we're going to be building a total of 81 square feet. Over those 4 units, we're assuming it's all the same. It shows our lot purchase price at $375, and we got our PPT $1055. Few closing costs, has our total land costs. We've got some development management in there. We've got our soft costs, and you can see that's actually adding up to quite a bit. It's $823,000. Construction costs with the contingency, and of course, then we have our legal, sales and marketing, and finance. And you can see in this case, finance is still substantial. It's almost $500,000. And this shows a project return, a total return of about $2 million, and broken down under this particular proforma. It shows a different, the way it's broken down. And then on the right here, I won't go into all the details, but just trying to show you that there is a lot of things to consider. So we're considering the lot size, what zoning is, what we're paying for the land, what our interest rate is, the total duration of the project. In this case, we have 10 months of pre-con time, 14 months of construction, and 2 months of sales and marketing and wrap-up. And then we have all of the soft costs that are listed below in the 2 columns here that Alan's highlighting. And you can see there's a lot of soft costs associated with this. So it's really important that you understand all these costs, because the last thing you want to do is jump into a project and find out that you have another $500,000 of cost, which may make the project not viable, and also might make you in a position where you don't have enough equity or cash to carry on with the project. Thank you. And of course, if you're selling it, and your realtor will have their hand out for a few dollars, and that's important to budget for that as well. One thing to just consider is if it's 4 units or less, no disclosure statement is required, but anything over 4 units does require a disclosure statement if you're going to be doing pre-sales. So that's really important. And if for those of you who haven't done a disclosure statement, if you've bought a condo pre-sale before, you've probably had some nice light reading. They're typically 50 to 100 pages long, and there's a lot of details in there. And as a developer, they have to all be accurate, and there can be pretty big penalties and fines if they're not. So it is something to consider if you're going to go do a project over 4 units with pre-sales. You definitely want to be careful and have that allocated for, and make sure that you've got a good legal team that's going to be helping you prepare that.